Immanuel Kant, working in Germany during the late 18th century, took skepticism to its greatest lengths. He argued that man could truly know neither observed objects nor metaphysical concepts. Rather, the experience of such things depended upon the psyche of the observer, thus rendering universal truths impossible. So I've heard people say, you tell your truth and then I'll tell my truth. That's such bullshit. There are universal truths. This is a hand. I am a real person. This is a chair. This is a table. This is light. Anybody disagree with any of that shit, then you're fucked up. Okay, anyways, that's important though, because if you can't understand observed objects, that kills science, and if you can't understand metaphysical concepts, you can't talk about ideas or spirituality or religion. Can't agree on universal truths such as what I just said, that this is reality, and I believe there's an objective truth that something either did or did not happen. I either punched that guy or I didn't, right? So his theories, because he was a skeptic, and along with David Hume, they were influential enough to change the nature of European thought, and they effectively end the Enlightenment. According to SparkNotes, say David Hume and Immanuel Kant, because of their skepticism, killed the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, when we became enlightened and we saw what was going on around us. Why would we want to end that era? Why would we stop that era from happening? That's the only way we can go forward. We need a new Enlightenment period. And we need to call this something, so I think New Enlightenment's a good name for it. Or the Age of Aquarius. So what age are we living in? December 15th, 2015. So what age is this? Whenever you look at time periods throughout the years, there's always an age, an era. And so what era are we in right now? When you know, a lot of these religious fucking brainwashed people, they don't live in reality. They're living in the Bronze Age. They're living in the Iron Age. They're living back before, you know, the wheel was invented, then the fire was invented. It's like people want to, you know, Chuck Norris says we're going to descend into 1,000 years of darkness. Why did we have the Dark Ages? Why did we have, you know, before the Enlightenment era, the Dark Ages was the church, the Catholic Church, and the kings, and they ruled by a divine right of kings. So that was religion, and it's always the religious conservatives that hold us back, scientifically, technologically, every meaningful way. It's always the religious that holds us back. They want to live by a book that was written in the Bronze Age or the Iron Age. The Bronze Age is BC, you know, 300 BC or so, and then the Iron Age goes up to 700 AD. Okay, so the Iron Age, well, that's, my God, that's Jesus, that's the Roman Empire, that's you know, a lot of the Romans and Greeks and Aristotle and Socrates, these motherfuckers was in the Iron Age. Why do we give a shit about what the fuck happened all the way back then? To me, the modern era started with the French Revolution. The French Revolution was year zero. Year zero. That's when the year began. That's the modern age, and I think we're in some type of postmodern age. Now, we need to get a term. I think we need to define ourselves. I think we need to say where it is that we are. I'm I'm an expert when it comes to history. I know a lot of history. As an expert on history, the point of learning history is, well, there's several reasons, but it's to see how far we've got, to see how far we've come. It's also to find those heroes that have stood up against insurmountable odds and still prevailed. So they give us a sort of blueprint on how to live. But that's, you know, that's the Enlightenment era happens. And I'm going to read some of the stuff about the Enlightenment era. And this actually is going to go to the Freedom School and about the 100 great books. But the Enlightenment era eventually dies because of Immanuel Kant. And Immanuel Kant is like, he's a skeptic, but he's religious. He's like, I don't know, I think he's a religious guy, isn't he? But even then, in the 1800s, you had a revival, you had these, you know, all this fucking church shit. But after you become scientifically rational, what comes after that? What comes after once you realize that all we've got is reason and logic, and reason and logic has its limits. because, you know, he was a skeptic. Immanuel Kant says, well, you can't trust your senses and you can't trust your brain. People have different psyches and different worldviews. Yeah, the religious conservative fucktards, the people that want to live, you know, 1,000 years of darkness, they're the ones living in 1,000 years. Chuck Norris is living in 1,000 years of darkness. He wants to keep it dark for fucking forever. And it's kind of insane to have such a child's perspective when you get into a car and you drive. I mean, like, it doesn't make any sense to me why you would still grapple and hold on to something that makes no sense whatsoever. And, you know, the fact that we've come so far, you know, cell phones, internet, automobiles, there's so many machines. So I wrote down all these terms, actually just trying to figure out what it is that I want to call the age that we're in. So the age that we're in right now, the Enlightenment Era, they say on, let's see here, the Age of Enlightenment, it says that it ends with the French Revolution or with Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, 1781 or 1789. And then all of a sudden we said, fuck science, fuck reason and logic, let's just do what? What's the, you know? So I've thought of a lot of things. We're living in an information age. I think that's a really good one. It's sort of myopic, you know, ubiquitous. It covers a lot of things. The Industrial Revolution was all about steel and factories and shit. We have information age and we could do industrial shit too. So it's not like, I don't know, I don't think it encompasses everything. There's a postmodern, more millennial, democratic enlightenment, maybe a new enlightenment, the Age of Aquarius. I like the Age of Aquarius and postmodern the best because Age of Aquarius predicts from 2597. So postmodern, the Age of Aquarius, I don't really like Aquarius because it's like astrological, but there's a scientific basis behind it, supposedly by how the planets align and shit. And the Age of Aquarius is supposed to start in 2597, so we still got like 600 years left before the Age of Aquarius actually begins. And it's also the reason why I like postmodern. The French Revolution brought the modern era in play. You know, the conversation with the Enlightenment was sort of, we've been ruled by these monarchies, by these kings and queens, and they've been using the divine right of kings, the church, the fact that God bequests them, and since God gave them the gift, and therefore they were allowed to rule over people. Essentially, one family got to power, and then once that family got to power, they kept on passing that power on down the line. So with the French Revolution, they chopped the head of King Louis XVI. Well, there's Louis the First, Second, Third, Fourth, right, 14th. So with the Bolshevik Revolution, they wiped out the Romanov family, the Russian Romanov, and this family had been in power since the 1600s, but that was what the Bolsheviks did. They took the family and they just fucking slaughtered all of them, July 17th. So that was that's like the French Revolution. You know, this says the House of Romanov reigned from 1613 to, you know, 1918, is that what it said? But for 300 years, for over 300 years, you had a family that ruled over all of Russia. And for what? How did they get that right? Just because one army, you know, eventually some family got some army or some money and shit, and they was eventually able to put their rule on everyone else. And then their kids just got all the power. And what this does, the reason why conservatives, Edmund Burke defends monarchies is because it's how to define how you can define a nation by, you know, the King Louis, I'm not sure if there's one or two, but there's definitely a 14, 15, and 16. I would assume that we had 1, 2, and 3, but let's just stay with those three kings, 14th, 15th, and 16th. So all of France was able to unite under one ruler, so therefore every French person knew that they were part of the French nation, the French nationality, because of a monarchy. And when you read history, it's easier to read history when it's tied with one person. It's easier to see how history works when just one person that's in power. So it's about nationalism, and it's about identity, and it's about control and order. You know, you maintain order. When you got one boss, you can maintain order. But the French Revolution just severs that. Once they chop the head off of King Louis XVI, shit's got to change. It's got to be different. And so the French Revolution changes everything. So anyways, that's modern age. What is today's age? That's why I think it's postmodern, because we haven't really figured it out. We haven't gone to the next step. Another thing I want to mention is the atomic age. since we had the atom bomb, we could totally destroy everything that we see here. So we could be the last generation. We could be the sticks and stones. We're the atomic generation, and then the sticks and stones generation will come next if we just blow everybody up. And that's been a threat since the 1940s. So we're still in the atomic age. We're with the age of enlightenment. They said the reason why it went down was because of religious conservatism, postmodernism, and feminism. Now there's also romanticism and skepticism and revivalism, the awakenings, and this. They did mention the religious conservatism. So why do we not want to? I'm not for sure if actually the age of enlightenment has stopped. It stopped then. That's what they're trying to say, the romantic era. They try to say when you're just stoic and just scientific, where's your heart? Where's your passion? Where's your feeling? Where's the spirit? These things that you can't measure just scientifically. If we're just stoic and it'll be a very efficient machine that we're running, but in a way it kind of, divorces ourselves from our emotions, and I don't think that has to be. Scientifically, we're humans, so we have our emotions for a reason, so I think that you could use logic and reason, but logic and reason is all we got. That's all we got. So if we're going to use words that, mean something different to me than it does to you, I don't believe in any higher power. I don't believe in God. I don't think there's anything after this. When I die, that's it, and I think that's all anybody has is the time on this planet. That is all that you got. And so I look at death a lot differently. But that's when you're basing your conversation has to be based on some sort of strong foundation. And we can't just say, well, I feel this way or my soul. I got soul. I don't believe in God, but I have a soul and I got spirit, and that means something to me. I know other people that say that doesn't even matter, but religious people, that means something to them too, right? So it's hard to say what those, and there's also unanswered questions in the world. UFOs, how did we get here? These are unanswered questions. The Bible and religious conservatism gives you an easy answer. God made us. And so that kills your sense of wonder. It kills your, your curiosity and just your sense of wonder. So you don't ever explore it. You don't ever try to say, well, what about this and what about that? You don't ask questions. And we should ask questions. So what the digital revolution, the last generation, the Tesla age, the corporate age, because a lot of people are against technological process. Just look at all Hollywood movies, look at government. It's almost like they look at technology as the enemy when it's a tool. Technology is just a tool. Technology is just an advance in science. So when you went from caveman and then you sharpened an axe and now you had an axe and now you had an arrow and you could shoot a deer, that's technology. When you increased your tools, when you made your tools better. So technology by itself isn't, bad by itself. So I think the technological generation, the information generation, postmodern, Aquarius generation, I like those terms too because there's a mysticism to it. So there's still, the romantic part of it. It's scientifically based, logic and reason. It's all we got is logic and reason. It's not much, but it's all we got. So that's what we got to use. If I go to you and I just start saying, I feel like this, and I feel, you might listen. But if I say, look, I got documentation, I got documentation and video evidence, has its limits. But that's, well, you doctored that. That's not true. So you need like other people who witnesses it. Science is pretty much easy. It's like you make observations, you develop general theories, you make predictions, you think of interesting questions, formulate hypotheses. And then you test all those questions and those ideas and those theories about the world. So, what goes up must come down. And so if I just keep on doing this over and over again, eventually I prove that gravity is here. Gravity is real. There's lots of different ways to do the scientific method, like a lot of these Enlightenment people. But there's that's the gist of it. Observation, experiment, and then it either agrees with what you predict or it negates it. And then once you've done the experiment so many times over, then it becomes fact, then it becomes the law of gravity. So I don't know what we're going to call ourselves. We do need to call it the corporate age. I don't want to call it the corporate. There's an anti-intellectual, anti-scientific strain of thought in American thought. And so even though we're in the age of information and technology and it's there at our fingertips, people choose to be ignorant. And so it could be the corporate age, it's just there so you could buy more shit, not to learn anything. We could be in the early internet age, early globalization age, the new industrial age, maybe even the marijuana age, with feminism that's they critiqued it. So for some reason feminism was different than the Enlightenment era. Well, could we be the gay generation? The legalization of marijuana seems to be the final frontier of the freedoms that we have. What else is there after that? Gay people have a right to marry. Women have a right to vote and work. What is next after the legalization of marijuana? There isn't anything. So that could be, we're the marijuana generation, the Aquarius generation, the hippie generation, the Nietzsche generation, the God generation, which is sort of ironic in a way because I reject the religion. I reject all the dumb, stupid shit. Fuck the ignorance. I'm very much, what Diderot said of Voltaire. I love what he said. Fuck the tyranny, fuck the lying, fuck the ignorance, fuck the superstition, and fuck the hypocrisy. Fuck the hypocrisy, fuck the tyranny, fuck ignorance. How can you be ignorant in the age of information? How can you be ignorant? And so, the God generation would be we're all gods, we're all individuals. Time magazine had a mirror, right? It's you. You're the one that we've been looking for. You're the man of the year. And, steel, machines, final frontier. I don't know. It's got a whole bunch of random thoughts kind of here. But that's the Tesla age. He'd actually get credit. Finally, he would get credit for his work, right? The scientific. I think science and what you can observe and what Zimmerman just flat out murders Trayvon Martin, right? He's stalking, he's following, he goes up to him and shoots him fucking cold blood, and then, I'm innocent. He did an interview and he said that it was God's plan. It was God's plan for Trayvon to get fucking killed. That is so fucked up. You're going to have evil people. You're going to have people that just say, I want to be evil, I want to do bad things. You're going to have people that say, I want to be good and I want to do good things. Those people just exist. I would think if you build them strong, they'll be good. But for religion, the only way that you could have bad people or good people who do bad things, you need religion. George Zimmerman thinks of himself as a good person. When he fucking murdered somebody, he killed somebody, now he doesn't feel bad about it. He just, that's God's plan. God's plan. And that's what the religious do. They stop any type of forward progression or any type of rational thought. We only have logic and reason. It's all we got. So why don't we use that? Why don't we talk and reason and democracy, ruled by the people? I believe in these things. I don't know if it's because I'm an American or whatever, maybe because I'm powerless, I don't know. But I believe that we can rule ourselves. We can rule, we can choose our own destiny, and we can rule the government or not even have a government. And so let's talk about the Enlightenment, because I think we need to revisit the Enlightenment thinkers, because the Enlightenment never ended. I don't believe that it ended. All these other fucking eras, they don't measure up. Yeah, certainly we had the Industrial Age, but Romanticism and the Revival, I don't know, there's nothing to them. Even Immanuel Kant, these things make you think. So Enlightenment, be enlightened, look around the world, be aware. We have consciousness. We all have consciousness. How do we have it? Who cares? What a mystery. What an awesome thing. You got consciousness. I got consciousness. And so the Enlightenment. Okay, so what's the Enlightenment? So we've been ruled by these kings and queens and these little families that, live in a big-ass castle, and then they had money, and they got these mercenary armies to take over a certain plot of land, and then the church, they would get the church to sanction them. The Holy Roman Empire, for 1,000 years, the Catholic Church was wiping people out, murdering and slaughtering. So people that want to critique the French Revolution because there was a lot of bloodshed, you're pretending there wasn't bloodshed beforehand. John Hughes, right? Jan Hughes in the Czech Republic. Anytime anybody said, hey, well, maybe the Catholic Church is wrong, they fucking killed him. The Spanish Inquisition, the Ku Klux Klan, Hitler, Mussolini, the Russian czars. All these were Christians. Christopher Columbus, 500,000 Tainos wiped out, murdered. Blood is on Christianity's hands. That's what is on there. Don't give me this bullshit, you're fucking better, that you're good. You have no basis for morality. You're using Bronze Age text. Bronze Age and Iron Age text, and you're saying that this, and you don't even read the fucking book. Read the book. That's probably the best way to get somebody to be skeptical against religion. Read the Bible. Just read a couple passages. It makes no fucking sense, okay? And interpret it for yourself. That's what Jan Hughes said. Fucking burned at the stake. So, Ku Klux Klan, I'll say all these again because I think it's important. The Klan going around murdering black people, oh yeah, that's just what Jesus wanted. Christopher Columbus sitting there raping all the Taino women and just murdering so many people, enslaving them. Is that what Jesus said? That ain't what fucking Jesus said. So, quit misinterpreting the bullshit. But morality is eye for an eye and do unto others. It's the golden rule. So that logically, that can be, acquired logically. We can figure that out logically. The point of that, this takes us to the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was in Germany. Lots of people had died. After the 30 Years' War, the Age of Enlightenment happens. After the 30 Years' War, you have Francis Bacon publishes his Novum Organum, okay? That's a book in 1620, and then that's what this, the New World Encyclopedia.org says ushers in the Enlightenment Age. And so the Novum Organum is written in Latin, published in 1620. It's a reference to Aristotle's work, Organon, which was his treatise on logic and syllogism. Essentially, Francis Bacon details a new system of logic he believes to be superior to the old ways, and now it's known as the Baconian method. He says to figure out heat, well, you got to list all the things that produce heat and the things that don't produce heat, and then another list, and it's a type of scientific method. So he writes this Novum Organum, and now people are like, wait a second. We can think for ourselves. We don't need kings and queens ruling over us and slaughtering us in these stupid-ass wars. If we don't put it into war, if mankind doesn't put it into war, war will put it into man. That's one of the thinkers. You got, Francis Bacon. Oh, if mankind doesn't put it into war, then war will put it into mankind. We got to stop it. We got to stop this shit. We're in the atomic age, right? We can still kill ourselves any fucking moment, right? Some psycho, the hydrogen bomb. Fucking Kim Jong-un's got the fucking hydrogen bomb. So we showed the world he's in the axis of evil. If you got an atomic weapon, we won't fuck with you. That's not a good lesson. So, everybody's going to try to get a hold of an atomic weapon. There's Hugo Grotius, John Comenius. Some of the big ones. Thomas Hobbes writes the Leviathan. And the Leviathan, he says we're evil. We're born evil. And since we're born evil, humans, our human nature is, then we need a big government to make sure everybody is doing good and doing right. So he called it the Leviathan. We need a big-ass government to make sure that we're all acting civilized and, doing good. John Locke, he changes it a little bit, and he says that we all are born with natural rights. He says that Thomas Hobbes, the continual fear and danger of violent death. So if we were just left to our own devices, there was no arts, no letters, no society. He looks at the Romans and the Greeks and how there was an age of Renaissance, and that was actually a quote that I had said to the newspapers when I ran for lieutenant governor in Kentucky, that I told them that we need a burst of culture, like the Renaissance, and then we usher into the Enlightenment, because you can't move asleeping people. If the people are asleep, they won't move, so you got to wake them up. So that's what I advocated, and then they ran a headline, unemployed student runs for lieutenant governor. Didn't quote me at all, just fucking slammed me just for the fuck of it. So that's the corporations, right? The corporations trying to control the information still. But that Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan, so we need one government to control everybody because we're born evil. Well, if we are just to live by our own devices, then without a big government telling us what to do, then the life of man is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So that's horrible, right? We're all alone. We're all poor, nasty, brutish, short. We're all fighting against each other. It's war against war, and eventually we all just, either wipe each other out, or we're all just by ourselves. So he advocates for a one government, which, of course, the Catholic Church and the kings and queens love that. John Locke said that we were born natural rights. The right to life, liberty, and not pursuit happiness, but life, liberty, and property. And therefore, government was supposed to be instituted to protect those natural rights. That's just a natural right we have being born on this planet. We have a right to live. We have a right to be free. And we have a right to have property. So the government should protect those natural rights. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, my favorite. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he, looks around the world and he writes the social contract. Social contract. He had a different perspective. He didn't think we were born evil. He believed we were born good. And first, he writes the social contract, and he says that there's a contract between the government and the people, and the government should be run by the consent of the governed. And so that opens up for democracy. Now, Rousseau, he actually said Emile is his favorite book. Now, he does go after human nature. He says that we're born good, and it's the institutions in society that corrupts us. And I think we don't even talk about that. Basically, Leviathan, John Locke, is who our founding fathers had designed our government for. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau didn't even get a mention. But he's one of the big people in the Enlightenment. Let's talk about these Enlightenment thinkers. Let's get into the age of the new Enlightenment, the age of Aquarius, the Enlightenment, the Tesla age. So just to recap, the social contract, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan, John Locke, Isaac Newton, he comes up with the type of scientific method. He also comes with the physics of just the 3 laws of physics. For every action, there's opposite and equal reaction. And Isaac Newton ushers a scientific revolution. And once a person has a scientific revolution, there's no going back from that. You got political revolutions, and they could be undone, they could be lost, but a scientific revolution is forever. Eventually, we won't have another major scientific revolution until Einstein. But Isaac Newton said, okay, here is how the basic of science. Here are the basic, tenets of science. So those are some of the beginning first peoples of the Enlightenment Era. Why don't we talk about these people? The Enlightenment Era is not over. It has not been finished. There's also Voltaire, Montesquieu, and I think Newton, he wrote Principia, and then in 1688, the year after, there's a Glorious Revolution, which essentially was a foreign takeover. A German foreign leader comes into England and takes it over. And I want to say it was King James, and was he Catholic? I don't know. These weird distinctions. How many denominations are there just in Christianity? Like 20 or 30 or so? Mormons, Presbyterian, Baptist. I don't. Who gives a shit? It's all bullshit, anyways. So quit making these dumb, stupid ass distinctions. And then they want to war over each other. Who's right? Who understands God and the Bible better? This Bronze Age bullshit. Okay. John Locke. He wrote an essay of human understanding in 1690. Voltaire says that government and religion should be separate. So that's the separation of government and religion. That's Voltaire. Voltaire would become popular because there was these salons and these conversations. These wealthy aristocratic women were having these sort of meetings with these great minds and sort of talking about politics and social mores and scientific progress. And so there was a sense of sort of, with some of the people, right, the upper classes, they wanted to know what the hell was going on. And Voltaire, that's where all these actually guys got their name from. When Rousseau wrote Emile, he had to flee. He had to take off because you're not allowed to say that children are good, right? They're born good and society corrupts them. So that means the school and the parents and the church, they're all fucking wrong because they got to beat that stupid shit in them, right? They got to beat you got to believe this dumb shit that I believe because it was beat into me, so I'm going to beat it into you. And then I'm going to cut off the tip of your dick and circumcise you, right? And so Montesquieu, he said that we should have a separation of powers, that we do need to be ruled by. It's a very, general overview. But Voltaire says that we do need a separation of powers. So if we do have a government, by separating the powers, then there won't be a tyranny. There won't be one person that takes over. There's a checks and balances, and that's what our system comes from. So Montesquieu, he's the one that comes up with the separation of power: executive, legislative, judicial, the 3 branches of government that we have. I know people that don't even know that, the very basis of the American system of government. So I'm not for sure what the age of Aquarius, what the millennial generation, what we're going to be doing with, the postmodern. I think to mock religion would be a good way to just bullshit. I don't want to spend too much time on it because really it takes away a lot of. Let's talk about science, scientific progress. Where are we at in our lives? Where do we want to go, and how do we get there? We can have a very methodical approach to how we can do better in our lives. So stop warmongers, fuck the tyranny, fuck the superstition, fuck. Diderot said about Voltaire. Diderot said on Voltaire that other historians teach history just to regurgitate facts. This thing happened, this person did this, and what the fuck ever. But Voltaire taught history so that once the facts was gone, once you didn't memorize every single detail, you still were pissed off about the tyranny, the superstition, the ignorance, the lying, and the hypocrisy. Fuck a hypocrite, fuck a liar, fuck the ignorant, fuck superstitious, and fuck tyranny. Fuck tyranny. That's Diderot. This is 200 years ago. How come, why did we put a stop to the Enlightenment? Let's get to the Enlightenment age. These are the foundations of the Enlightenment age, and let's have a new Enlightenment. I'm going to keep on talking about the Enlightenment thinkers. Emile, Rousseau, social contract on education. This leads to the French Revolution. The French Revolution is year 0. The French Revolution changed everything, changed the whole game. The Haitian Revolution. French Revolution was the only true revolution. Well, no, actually, the Haitian Revolution was actually a better revolution. That's the slaves got the power. The slaves got the power. The French, the reason why the French Revolution, because the France had controlled and dominated politics for so many years, and so for them to chop off the fucking head, you know, Louisville is named after King Louis, the guy who they chopped the head off. St. Louis is named after him. So we have cities in this country that was named after the imperialists that the French people couldn't fucking stand, so they chopped his goddamn head off. Now you had some people, Edmund Burke and shit, that tried to defend the monarchy and the king and the reason why we had this shit and the order that it, you know, that it maintained. But once you chop a person's head off, that's a hell of a fucking end, right? That's Thomas Hobbes, danger of a violent death. Oh shit, we're scared that we're gonna die, have a violent death, right? So the wiping out the Romanovs, it changes the whole game. It wipes out every fucking thing that they had done, and now it's in a new era, regardless if you're ready for it or not. You know, regardless. So, you know, the internet generation, essentially, we're the Gutenberg printing press revolution times 7-8 billion. So the Gutenberg print and press revolution, it was the Bible that they eventually made, but the printing press made it to where you could just copy lots of books and then distribute those books, and then people started reading the Bible for themselves and interpret it for themselves instead of having the Catholic Church interpret it for them. And that brought, you know, I think the Protestant Reformation, and there's, you know, a revolution that was going on there. They'll interpret the Bible for yourself. You don't have to listen to these fuckers, these priests who sit there and say, well, you did this sin, so now you got to pay. You did this sin, they had indulgences, so if you had a sin, they would say, well, we can annul you of your sin if you just pay us some money. Oh, that's fucking wonderful. So they say, interpret the Bible for yourself. Gutenberg print and revolution, press revolution changes the entire game, because now people can read, you know, things that they couldn't read, but still it was limited to people that had access to books, people that could write, people had access to the printing press. If you wanted to write a book right now, that wouldn't be an easy thing to accomplish. But if you want to write a blog, if you want to get on Facebook, Twitter, you could type to each other. So we are being able to, we all have our own printing press, and we're all able to express anything that we want to express. So why not make our communication better, build off the knowledge of others, use science so we can actually, you know, that's the idea of science, is that you had studied and observed some shit. I looked at what you studied and what you observed, and I built off your work. And that's where we should be at, but we're not even close to that. I want to give Immanuel Kant some credit. He doesn't seem as religious as I had thought, but I thought that he was like an apologist for religion. So check him out, but the fact that he ends the scientific revolution or the Enlightenment era makes me skeptical. Kant disregarded the basic categories of the human mind as the transcendental condition of possibility for any experience. Politically, Kant was one of the earliest exponents of the idea perpetual peace could be secured through universal democracy and international cooperation. He believed that this eventually would be the outcome of universal history, although it's not rationally planned. I like that. I like the idea that history, you know, progresses. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't actually have to progress. It could go backwards. The exact nature of Kant's religious ideas continue to be a subject of especially heated philosophical dispute, with viewpoints ranging from the idea that Kant was an early and radical exponent of atheism, who finally exploded the ontological argument for God's existence, to more critical treatments epitomized by Nietzsche, who claimed that Kant had theologian blood and that Kant was merely a sophisticated apologist for traditional Christian religious belief, writing that Kant wanted to prove in a way that would dumbfound the common man that the common man was right. That was the secret joke of the secret joke of this soul. That's what Nietzsche said about Kant. So actually I kind of probably am right. But I like that idea that perpetual peace through universal democracy and international cooperation, that logically that does make sense. If we're all paying attention, why would we want to just start wiping each other out? Because we're all fucking Bill Burr and we think that we can make, you know, there might be a lot of people on the planet, but if we actually gave a shit, we could start, you know, I think we could take care of everybody and then, you know, not have a shit ton of kids and start being more responsible. But, okay, you got Voltaire, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, John Locke, Montesquieu, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Hugo Grotius, Francis Bacon, John Comenius, John Locke, Thomas Hobbes. I might have repeated some of these, but these are the founders, you know, of Immanuel Kant, Isaac Newton. Immanuel Kant ends it, but these are some of the Enlightenment thinkers, and we should have a discussion about them. So at Nicaea in 325 AD, pretty much changes the entire world. Constantine becomes the Roman emperor, but then he brings Christianity. Remember, it was the Romans that killed Jesus. But now you got the Roman emperor who's adopting Christianity and makes it the religion for everybody. So how is he going to do that? Well, he's got to get all the pagans and all the, the witches and the druids and everybody on the same page. And so they write, they start making laws and make it uniform. They start the church. That's what 325 AD. That's the Iron Age. That's the Iron Age. And then a lot of the Old Testament comes from the Bronze Age. So what the fuck? Why are we even stuck in the Bronze Age? This is like, Native American type stuff. I mean, I'm impressed. There was a plow and they was using bronze. You mix tin and alloy and steel, tin. I don't know. You make metals, right? And you use metals for swords and shit. But that's not everybody. But they were doing shit like that. So Bronze Age they're smelting its own copper, alloying with tin, arsenic, or other metals by trading for bronze from production areas elsewhere. Copper tin ores are rare, as reflected in the fact that there are no tin bronzes in Western Asia before trading in bronze became whatever. This is old shit. Who gives a shit? Where we're at now. I don't think that's prehistory. That's before the French Revolution. Who gives a shit? Okay, so we're here at the age of enlightenment, the new, the information age, the age of Aquarius. And I got the new age. This is the 1960s. That's where age of Aquarius thing actually came into belief. And the New Age belief is whereas once humanity lived in the age of great technological advancement and spiritual wisdom, it entered a period of spiritual degeneracy, which will be remedied through the establishment of a coming age of Aquarius, from which the movement gets its name. There's also a strong focus on healing, particularly using forms of alternative medicine and emphasis on the New Age science, which seeks to unite science with spirituality. Good. Okay, so the Stoic, there's just the pure reason, logic, Stoic perspective of the Enlightenment age. I can understand why that's criticized, but we're not even close to being there. But there's a guy, Yevgeny Zamyatin wrote a book called We. George Orwell turns it into 1984. He basically stole it, but it's not the same. So there is some significant differences. But it's a dystopian novel, and Yevgeny Zamyatin says, well, if we're purely scientific, what will be the problems with having a pure reason, logical, orderly world? What would be the problems that would derive from something like that? The loss of passion, the loss of individuality, the loss of spirituality. So, I think that's a good warning when we get there. If I'm going to build a car, how much spirituality do you want in it? Yeah, the design and make it look sleek and cool, but you want the wheels to turn when you turn the key, the engine to start. When you turn on a computer, you want the, electronics and the microprocessors to work. So you want scientific, certainty. You want things to work as they're supposed to work. And therefore, that's where we're at. Fuck this stupid religion. We always go backwards with religion. I don't want to go back to the Bronze and the fucking Iron Age. I want to advance and go forward. Okay? You talk about your fucking religion some other day. I don't give a shit. That doesn't matter to me. Whether you're Buddhist, Islamist, Jewish, Christian, what kind of Christian, Presbyterian. I don't give a shit about none of that. That's just, you want to be dumb. I'm not Hitler. You want to be right to be stupid if you want to be. Be stupid, but I'd rather you not be stupid, okay? It doesn't mean a damn thing to me at all. None of your fucking religious bullshit does. And I would want to be in like-minded company. If you want to believe dumb shit, you can believe dumb shit, right? Pray to the sun. If you pray to the sun, that might worship the sun, right? You can see the sun. That's a little bit better than your fucking God delusions. Anyways, the Romantic Era is sort of the reaction to the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment, scientific rationalization of nature embodied most strongly in the visual arts and music and literature, historiography, education, natural sciences. So there's other things besides just science, right? There's artistic and music, and these are good things, so I'm not against those things. And so I think there is a rectification between the Romantic Era and the Scientific Era, but it's still logic, reason, science, experiment, observation, theory, test your theory, reject the theory or keep it. These are the foundations of who we are as human beings and where we're at. So the Enlightenment advocated reason as a means to establish an authoritative system of aesthetics, ethics, government, and even religion. See, I don't care for the authoritative bullshit. I think we still got to talk about the how we're going to govern ourselves. But I think that's, scientific people could be talking about these things. The Newtonian is emboldened by the revolution in physics, commenced by Newtonian kinematics or kinematics. So Newtonian was actually huge, right? You can't go backwards from a scientific revolution. Once Newton says there's a law of gravity and that there's an opposite and equal reaction. How do you, nuh-uh. Well, you can not believe it if you don't want to. As soon as Galileo or Copernicus says that the Earth revolved around the sun, I mean, once you know that, Immanuel Kant, who basically was just a religious apologist who told the common man that he was smarter for believing the dumb shit. They say that he was the one that stopped it with his critique of pure reason. And then they said that the Enlightenment confidence on the power of reason's bullshit romanticism with its emphasis upon imagination, spontaneity, and passion also emerged as a reaction against the dry intellectualism of rationalists. Criticism of the Enlightenment has expressed itself in a variety of forms, such as religious conservatism, postmodernism, and feminism. The legacy of the Enlightenment has been of enormous consequence for the modern world. The general decline of the church, the growth of secular humanism, and political and economic liberalism, the belief in progress and the development of science are among its fruits. Its political thought, developed by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Voltaire, Rousseau, created the modern world. It created the intellectual framework not only for the American Revolutionary War, liberalism, democracy, capitalism, French Revolution, French Revolution, also racism, right? There's a good critique on Enlightenment, racism, nationalism, secularism, fascism, communism. So even actually Karl Marx, he basically says, there's a primitive communist, and then there is the feudal society, then the capitalist society, and then eventually the workers stand up, and there's, they bring in a communist society. So he breaks down, that's why it's important to understand where you're at in life. And he looked at it, dialectical materialism, I think is what they call it, but he looked at, as history as a progress towards some better end. The intellectual leaders of the Enlightenment regarded themselves as courageous elite who would lead the world into progress from a long period of doubtful tradition and ecclesiastical tyranny, which had resulted in the bloody 30 Years' War and the English Civil War. The dogmatism took three forms: Lutheran, Calvinist, Divines, Jesuit, Scholasticism, theory of Durant. So Immanuel Kant essentially classified his predecessors between the rationalist and the empiricist. René Descartes, let's make sure, René Descartes, he made doubting the first principle of philosophy. I think, therefore I am. But there's rationalist and imperialist. It might be oversimplification, but it's been used. Three main rationalists are normally taken to have been René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, Gottfried Leibniz, building upon their English predecessors, Francis Bacon and Thomas Hobbes. The three main empiricists were John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. The former were distinguished by the belief that in principle, though not in practice, all knowledge can be gained by the power of reason alone. The latter rejected this, believing that all knowledge has to come through the senses, from experience. Thus, the rationalists took mathematics as their model for knowledge, and the empiricists took the physical sciences. So, physical science versus math. How do you look at between what, your truth and my truth? How do you look at the world? Is it mathematically ordered, or is it through the experiences? And frankly, I think it's both. It's like theory and experience, action and theory. So you need to have some sort of theoretical framework for interpreting the world, but at the same time, you learn from experience. Einstein says all knowledge is experience, and the rest is just information. And so information, like you could, I don't know, I guess you got experience of reading and working math. That's some type of experience. Right? So I don't see why those are actually two separate things. I think you can have a mathematical and a physical science approach to reality. But these are, David Hume, George Berkeley, John Locke, Gottfried Leibniz, Thomas Hobbes, Francis Bacon, René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, Francis Bacon, René Descartes, John Locke, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke. Did I mention them? So I just realized that I was focused on the philosophy of the Enlightenment and not exactly the science. So let's talk about the science. Nicholas Copernicus and Galileo and Newton, they said that the reasonable way to look at the world and our the intuition that had been used in the church's perspective was actually wrong. And so Copernicus said that the Earth revolved around the sun, and that was what started the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution, based on experimentation and reason, questioned previously held truths and searched for new answers. It modified the medieval view of the world and human beings' relation to it, thus helped shape the Enlightenment. Galileo Galilei made the first systematic studies of uniformity, accelerated motion, and improved astronomical observations with help support the Copernicanism. Edmund Halley discovered the proper motion of stars and the periodicity of comets. Other significant scientific advances were made by Johannes Kepler, Blaise Pascal, Christian Huygens, Robert Hooke, and Gottfried Leibniz. So just, look up those names. This is off of New World Encyclopedia. So in terms of physics, biology, chemistry, magnetism, electricity, taxonomy, the biological classification, you had Carl Linnaeus, you had Antoine Leeuwenhoek, who, because of the microscope, was able to see that we had tiny organisms. Robert Hooke named those tiny organisms the cells. He was looking at plant tissues and said that they were cells, and we still use that name today. So Gottfried Leibniz, Robert Hooke, Christian Huygens, Blaise Pascal, these are all core Enlightenment thinkers. Edmund Halley. Okay, so Isaac Newton, he combined mathematics of axiomatic proof with mechanics of physical observation and established a coherent system of verifiable predictions in his Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. The Principia, for short, 1687. His greatest claim to prominence came from a systematic application of algebra to geometry with synthesized a workable calculus applicable to scientific problems. The integration of algebraic thinking acquired from the Islamic world over the previous 2 centuries and geometric thinking, which had dominated Western mathematics and philosophy since at least Eudoxus, precipitated a scientific and mathematical revolution. So Isaac Newton, right, calculus, optics, the science of light, the laws of motion, and of course his Principia. So his Principia, the 1686, 1687, is the greatest philosophy of science. Once you've had, the laws of motion and Isaac Newton, I would like to say a lot of that the Enlightenment came from him. I mean, once he changed the game like that, he changed the entire thing. You can't go today, even, a lot of scientific progress is based upon Isaac Newton's findings. But the father of the Enlightenment, Francis Bacon, René Descartes. Descartes said you need math and reason to figure out the entire world, and he believed that the world was like a perfect clock, and it was made by a clockmaker. He made it, and then he walked away. So everything has a sort of mathematics. You can figure everything out by math. And so, I don't know, nature is God, or that there's a certain order to everything. I think there's some uncertainty to a lot of it too, but it's a good way to look at things, I think, because even Newton had defended sort of, when there's a parabola, an arc of a ball, it's scientifically, it can be perfect, laws of motion, physics. Harvey talked about the circulation of blood, and I would say anything past the Enlightenment would be, based upon the idea of reason and science, of rational thought reigning supreme. So steel, copper, concrete, machines, vehicles, cars, microprocessors, computers, big oil wells, right, and probably modern warfare shit too. So all this is combined because of the Enlightenment. So we're still in the Enlightenment. Maybe we need a new Enlightenment or the Age of Aquarius, without postmodernism. But these are important to remember. William Harvey, circulation of blood. I don't know if you need to know the names as much as the ideas. The ideas are what's important. The Enlightenment was a time when the solar system was truly discovered, with the accurate calculation of orbits, such as Halley's Comet, the discovery of the first planet since antiquity, Uranus. Found Uranus, right? Uranus had been missing for quite some time, but he was able to pinpoint exactly where Uranus was. The calculation of the mass of the sun using Newton's theory of universal gravitation. These series of discoveries had a momentous effect on both pragmatic commerce and philosophy. The excitement engendered by creating new and orderly vision of the world, as well as the need for philosophy of science, which could encompass the new discoveries, greatly influenced both religious and secular ideas. If Newton could order the cosmos with natural philosophy, so many argued, could political philosophy order the body politic. So I was talking a lot about the political thoughts, but I'm focused on the science right now. So the natural scientists, they were saying natural philosopher is what we'd call a scientist. A philosopher was just someone who tried to acquire knowledge, and therefore a natural philosopher was one that tried to sort of, figure out the natural world. So the science, science came out of the Age of Enlightenment. Science is really, from Wikipedia, the most influential publication of the Enlightenment was the Encyclopedia. So the encyclopedia, Wikipedia, I mean, my God, we have this at our fingertips. When Dennis Diderot had made the encyclopedia, it was 35 volumes. And, the Encyclopedia Britannica people used to have encyclopedias. They don't have it anymore. We got the internet, age of information technology generation, the Gutenberg printing press times a billion, times 8 billion. So it was compiled by Dennis Diderot, Ron de Alamobert, and team of 150 scientists. That was his encyclopedia. It's published between 1751 and 1772 in 35 volumes and spread the ideas of the Enlightenment across Europe and beyond. Other landmark publications were the Dictionnaire philosophique, the Philosophical Dictionary, 1764. The English, 1733, is published, written by Voltaire. Rousseau's Discourse on Inequality is 1754. The Social Contract, 1762. Emile, and we cannot forget, Rousseau himself thought that Emile was his greatest book. And after, all these culminated with the French Revolution, even John Locke said if the government doesn't protect your right to life, liberty, and property, overthrow it. Like, you don't need it. Overthrow that government. The Social Contract, Montesquieu's Spirit of the Law, 1748. Ideas of the Enlightenment played a major role in inspiring the French Revolution, began in 1789. After the Revolution, the Enlightenment was followed by an opposing intellectual movement called Romanticism. Some other members, Francis Bacon, Descartes, Locke, Spinoza. Major figures of the Enlightenment included Cesar Beccaria, Voltaire, Denis Diderot, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, David Hume, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant. Rulers including Catherine II of Russia, Joseph II of Austria, and Frederick I of Prussia tried to apply Enlightenment thought on religious and political tolerance, which became known as Enlightened Absolutism. The Americans Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson came to Europe during the period and contributed actively to the scientific and political debate, and the ideals of the Enlightenment were incorporated into the United States Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. So science came to play a leading role in the Enlightenment discourse and thought. Many Enlightenment writers and thinkers had backgrounds in sciences and associated scientific advancement with the overthrow of religion and traditional authority in favor of the development of free speech and thought, freedom of press, freedom of speech. The scientific progress during the Enlightenment included the discovery of carbon dioxide, fixed air by the chemist Joseph Black, the argument for deep time by geologist James Hutton, and the invention of the steam engine by James Watt, the argument for deep time by geologist James Hutton, chemist Joseph Black, carbon dioxide, fixed air. The experiments of Lavoisier were used to create the first modern chemical plants in Paris, and the experiments of the Montgolfier brothers enabled them to launch the first manned flight in a hot air balloon on November 21st, 1783, from the Chateau de la Motte near the Bois de Boulogne. Broadly speaking, Enlightenment science greatly valued empiricism and rational thought. We have our senses, how we interpret the world through our senses. That's empiricism. It was embedded with the Enlightenment ideal of advancement and progress. The study of science under the heading of natural philosophy was divided into physics and a conglomerate grouping of chemistry and natural history, which included anatomy, biology, geology, mineralogy, and zoology. As with most Enlightenment views, the benefits of science were not seen universally. Rousseau criticized the science called liberty, political equality. Rousseau criticized the sciences for distancing man from nature and not operating to make people happier. Science during the Enlightenment was dominated by scientific societies and academies, which had largely replaced universities as centers of scientific research and development. Societies and academies were also the backbone of the maturation of the scientific profession. Another important development was the popularization of science, and among an increasingly literate population, philosophies introduced the public to many scientific theories, most notably through the encyclopedia. Diderot's encyclopedia, it looks like encyclopedia, but it's with an E, so I don't know how you're supposed to say that. The popularization of Newtonianism by Voltaire and the Emilia de Châtelet. Some historians have marked the 18th century as a drab period in the history of science. However, the century saw significant advancements in the practice of medicine, mathematics, and physics, development of biological taxonomy, new understanding of magnetism and electricity, the maturation of chemistry as a discipline which established the foundations of modern chemistry. Scientific academies and societies grew out of the scientific revolution as the creators of scientific knowledge, in contrast to the scholasticism of the university during the Enlightenment. Some societies created or retained links to universities. However, contemporary sources distinguish universities from scientific societies by claiming that the university's utility was in the transmission of knowledge, while societies functioned to create knowledge. As the role of universities in institutionalized science began to diminish, learned societies became the cornerstone of organized science. Official scientific societies were chartered by the state in order to provide technical expertise. Most societies were granted permission to oversee their own publications, control the election of new members, and the administration of the society. After 1700, a tremendous number of official academies and societies were founded in Europe. By 1789, there were over 70 official scientific societies. In reference to this growth, Bernard de Fontenelle coined the term the Age of Academies to describe the 18th century. The influence of science also began appearing more commonly in poetry and literature. During the Enlightenment, some poetry became infused with scientific metaphor and imagery, while other poems were written directly about scientific topics. Sir Richard Blackmore committed the Newtonian system to verse and creation, a philosophical poem in 7 books, 1712. After Newton's death in 1727, poems were composed in his honor for decades. James Thomson penned his poem to the memory of Newton, which mourned the loss of Newton, but also praised his science and legacy. Economics and law. Hume and other Scottish Enlightenment thinkers developed a science of man, which was expressed historically in works by authors including James Burnet, Adam Ferguson, John Miller, and William Robertson, all of whom merged the scientific study of how humans behaved in ancient primitive cultures with a strong awareness of the determining forces of modernity. Enlightenment brought in modernism. We're all here. We can use rational thought. Sociology largely originated from this movement, and Hume's philosophical concepts that directly influenced James Madison. Thus, the U.S. Constitution is popularized by Dugald Stewart, would be the basis of classical liberalism. Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, often considered the first work on modern economics that had an immediate impact on British economic policy that continues into the 21st century. Cesar Beccaria, a jurist and one of the great Enlightenment writers, became famous for his masterpiece of Crimes and Punishments, 1764, which was later translated into 22 languages. Another prominent intellectual was Francesco Mario Pagano, who wrote important studies such as Saggi Politici, Political Essays, 1783, one of the major works of the Enlightenment in Naples, and Considerazione sul processo criminale, Considerations in the Criminal Trial, Considerations on the Criminal Trial, 1787, which established him as an international authority on criminal. The political Enlightenment thinkers, we have liberal democracies. Essentially, liberal democracy has triumphed all across the world, right? Francis Fukuyama, the end of history. John Locke, one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers, based on his governance, philosophy, and social contract theory, a subject that permeated Enlightenment political thought. The English philosopher Thomas Hobbes ushered in this new debate with his work Leviathan in 1651. Hobbes also developed some of the fundamentals of European liberal thought: the right of the individual, the natural equality of all men, the artificial character of the political order, which led to the later distinction between civil society and the state, the view that all legitimate political power must be representative and based on the consent of the people, and the liberal interpretation of law, which leaves people free to do whatever the law does not explicitly forbid. Both Locke and Rousseau developed social contract theories in 2 treatises on government and discourse on inequality, respectively. While quite different works, Locke, Hobbes, and Rousseau agreed. So while they were different works, government's authority lies in the consent of the governments necessary for man to live in civil society. They were different because Locke defines the state of nature as a condition in which humans are rational and follow natural law, in which all men are born equal with the right of life, liberty, and property. However, when one citizen breaks the law of nature, both the transgressor and the victim enter into a state of war from which it is impossible to break free. Therefore, Locke said that individuals enter into a civil society to protect their natural rights via an unbiased judge or common authority such as court to appeal to. Contrastingly, Rousseau's conception relies on the supposition that civil man is corrupted, while natural man has no want he cannot fulfill himself. Natural man is only taken out of the state of nature when the inequality associated with private property is established. I'm going to say it again because it's important. Natural man is only taken out of, let's see, Jacques Rousseau's conception relies on the supposition that civil man is corrupted, while natural man has no want he cannot fulfill himself. Natural man is only taken out of the state of nature when the inequality associated with private property is established. Rousseau said that people join into civil society via the social contract to achieve unity while preserving individual freedom. This is embodied in the sovereignty of the general will, the moral and collective legislative body constituted by citizens. Utilitarian thought, the happiness for the greatest numbers. I think that's a pretty important idea, and I think I'm going to end it off on that. So, Adam Ferguson, David Hume, keep the new enlightenment. Let's be smarter. Let's act smarter, more rational, more reason, more science, more logic, better understanding, and let's try to achieve peace and a better cooperative, more